Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 8 of The Imperfects. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, it seems like I kind of was in the right ballpark last episode with just kind of like, this friendship is kind of teetering after everything. I mean, they kind of all went through a little bit of a rough patch last episode. Obviously, Tilda the most out of any of them, because not only did PJ die, because at least Hannah's still alive. I mean, granted, she died but got resurrected. At least Darcy's alive. They're just not in Abby and Juan's life, respectively. But it's like, not only did Tilda lose PJ, she also killed Nate, and I think it is a situation of probably didn't fill that void as much as she thought it would. I mean, getting revenge is one thing, but it doesn't, in the end, it wasn't going to bring back PJ regardless, but it made her probably feel better that he got his just dessert. But I think that plays all a big role in why Tilda's always kind of had like a little bit of an, once again, like how very like dismissive and like sarcastic she can be. It's even more so in this episode, and it eventually kind of becomes like super apparent to Juan and Abby with the way she's acting, because they're like, why are you acting like this all of a sudden, like you don't care? Because it's like, right, Sarkov, we want to get fixed, right? He wants us to steal some nanobots. Okay, let's go steal them nanobots. Which Juan's like, oh please, why does it have to be robots? And I love that he's like, yeah, all scientists, it sounds like this Dr. Monday might be the only scientist with a moral code. And Abby's like, hey. And he's like, you're right. Yeah, right. Dr. Burt. Hey, what? And he's like, what, Abby? I don't think of you as a scientist. She's like, what? He's like, it's a compliment. Because I guess it's like, right, you're super smart, but you're not. Because for him, he looks at all of these scientists as like, I guess he just looks at her as someone very intelligent. She hasn't really done, full-blown scientist stuff yet. So I guess that's why he's like, it's a compliment. Because everyone that does the science stuff around us, the real, scientist stuff, end up being dickwads. So it's like, why would I want you to be one? So they end up tracking down, going to Dr. Monday's place. And they're like, well, Abby's like, well, how do we plan on getting the nanobots? And they're looking, Juan and Tilda are like, what? You pheromone her. It's like, no, guys, I can't control that. It's like, well, you've gotten better control at it. I mean, but also it kind of plays into, once again, your reluctancy to use your powers. At least the others kind of flex theirs when the time comes. Once again, Tilda's used hers to the up degree, way more than even Juan has used his. But still, she's been so reluctant to use her because her fear kind of keeps her from using it. But it's like, right, Dr. Monday, I don't know whether she's going to try and kiss me or whether she's going to kill me, depending on what pheromones I end up releasing. It's like, what we're going to do is, I have a plan. It's like, okay, what's your plan? We're going to tell her the truth. It's like, oh, Abby, no. And so they end up telling Abby's like, okay, Dr. Monday, we were sitting here by Dr. Sarkov to steal your nanobots, but we're not going to do that. Well, you're here to rob me? No, well, that's what Dr. Sarkov wants, but that's not what we're going to do. It's like, okay, I'm going to get the door in a minute. It's like, see, everything's sorted. It's like, yeah, she's out back, and she's waiting for that drone to get us. What drone? That drone. And Tilda knocks it down. It's like, cool, let's just bust in. And that Dr. Monday is played by Candace McClure, which I'm like, hey, just saw you pop up again, obviously, in the fourth and final season of Charmed. Then you were also in the third and final season of Motherland's Fort Salem was the most recent thing I saw her in. So I'm just like, hey, every time I see Candace McClure, so that's cool. Either way, I was shocked how little she was in the episode when it's like, that robot arm activates and shoots and something happens because I guess when Tilda broke the arm, there was still kind of a charge in it. So when it fell, it ended up firing a headshot the doctor. I was like, wait, she's dead? I was like, are we going to find out she's not human or something? I was like, no, she's dead. I was like, oh, that seems weird. I got too much in my head. I was like, well, it's Candace McClure. I just feel like she's a very specific actor you hire for something. So I'm like, you would expect her to be in more of the episode than that. But I'm like, oh, I guess not. So it's like, cool. What do we do now? It's like, well, we got the nanobots and the nanobot printer. So why don't we just take this to Alex? But it's like, no, we don't know what he's going to do with it. We can't trust him. This man who made us into what we are, we can't trust because he's, the nanobots could be used to make the cure and disseminate it to the 25 people easily, but he also has ulterior motives for it. It's like, well, we don't know what he's up to. We can't trust him. But Tilda's like, fine, let's not go back to Seattle until we figure it out. Which involves them going and staying at a hotel, and she's kind of celebrating, and she's trying to get everyone drunk. And there's this line from Juan where it's like, right, Abby's worried about you. It's like, no, Abby's mad at me because I accidentally am like super indifferent about killing this scientist who was like very revolutionary in like the artificial intelligence lane of things, and who was actually, by all intents and purposes, seemed like they were a good, decent person, and I was just so cavalier about them being dead. Like, all right, let's move on. Who cares? Like, she's very because I think she's let her heart get the best of her for so long. And for her, it's just like, I'm tired of it. It's like, why should I care about this death? It's another death on the long list, a checklist of people that have died around. It's like, everywhere we go, death tends to follow us. So shouldn't we be used to this by now? And so she has this conversation with Juan where he's like, do you even want to be cured anymore? She's like, yes, of course I do. I was like, the moment she said it, I was like, you're lying, aren't you? I figured as much because I brought it up last episode. She doesn't need the cure anymore. Her main reason to get the cure was like PJ and the band and wanting to tour and stuff like that. But I think the music that was so beautiful and everything, it's so lost on her now. It feels symbolic that it's like, right, she used to put her headphones, her cans on just to block out everything. And now that she's like fully embracing it, she's kind of like losing grip, like she's letting go of her humanity, just kind of full leading into being banshee, you know? And she's trying to celebrate with the others and kind of getting them to drink a little. And there's that sad line where like Juan was like, hey, why would we never see each other again? Because Tilda was like, yeah, if we never see each other again, at the very least, I'm glad we went through this. But he's like, why wouldn't we go through this? Why wouldn't we see each other again, even if we get cured? We're friends. And she's like, yeah, but her and Abby kind of agree that the extenuating circumstances are what brought them together. It's like, even if if it weren't for our circumstances, we never would have ever met in any capacity. So it is kind of sad. It's like, yeah, that might be true, but you have been given this opportunity to become friends now. So, maybe under normal circumstances you wouldn't have been, but, that's a what if situation. We're dealing with what is, And I was wondering, because of their Seoul situation, I was like, well, he is the one that kind of wakes up earlier later. So I do get the feeling there's probably like Juan probably did end up absorbing the alcohol a little bit better than everyone else. To be fair, Tilda kept pouring drinks into him. Like, I think Abby's a lightweight, so she kind of got out by like 2 or 3 drinks, but Juan kept knocking him back. And the moment you notice that Tilda isn't drinking anymore, I'm like, she's trying to get him drunk, especially. She's like, oh, it's time to go to bed. It's like, what are you about to do? I'm sure it didn't make anything easier when Juan was saying, like, I'm glad you didn't do anything to Nate. You're like, ugh. And she just kind of has to smile. I'm like, yeah. He's like, I know you want to do something to Nate after what he done to PJ, to Darcy, to Hannah. But you doing it's like, right, he's the monster, not us. He's the monster. And basically, like, karma will set him right. And the fact is, I think this is what ended up piecing it together for him later on when she was like, Banshee girl, call me, karma or something like it was something like that. And it was like kind of implying like, oh, I'm going to be the karma that gets him, or in fact, she ended up being the karma that got him, but I think Juan was too drunk at the time to really catch that, so she did feel bad, like, turning her back on them, but it's like, I think in her mind, it's like, in the long run, this is towards getting you guys your cure. You might not like Alex or Sarkov or doing what he does, but the fact that, and it kind of almost fits too, because out of anyone, she's kind of subsequently gotten the closest to Sarkov. The whole Al thing is like, when did you guys become best friends? She's like, we're not, but I kind of see him for who he is. It's almost in a way poetic, as she's kind of like loosening her grip on, like, kind of letting go of everything that was kind of holding on to it's like she kind of letting go of bits of Tilda and leaning more into the whole Banshee thing, and it's just Alex just being, always kind of leaning into the mad scientist, even though he'll try to justify it, which I understand where he's coming from, but I still feel like he hasn't fully justified doing all that he's done. Then for Juan and Abby to wake up to, her coming back with Alex getting everything they needed and then bouncing. They ended up leaving the other the nanites that were already made there, but all they had needed was the nanite printer. That way they can print as many as they want. And you can tell it is weighing heavy on Tilda that doing that, because regardless of anything, she feels bad because they are her friends, especially betraying Juan, because he kind of believes in her so much that it kind of breaks her heart. But it's like, right, in the end, this is kind of, I think, for the betterment, like regardless of what he wants, like what Alex wants, as long as they get cured in the end, and she's kind of fine with him doing whatever he wants, help out whatever she can, just for the sake of getting them their cures, because she doesn't want it anymore. Once again, she has no reason to really want it, at least where she is now in her mindset. But it's like, right, Abby and Juan, they should get it, but it's like, no, they were planning on double-crossing me, so this isn't democracy. Well, either you're on my side or you're against me, so you have to decide, and Tilda ultimately kind of chooses his side. And they always keep finding themselves one step behind. Doesn't help that the nanite situation turned into what it did, because the moment like they're driving and then the vehicle turns around, I'm like, what the hell is that about? And it's like, oh, the nanites took control of the vehicle, took them back to Dr. Monday's place, possessed her body, kind of brought her back from the dead. You're like, cool. And I love that it's at first like, it's like, okay, Juan, check her body for the keys. It's like, why do I have to do it? It's like, well, you eat flesh. She's like, oh, wow. She's like, no, it's not a judgment. It's just an observation. He's like, oh, I don't eat flesh. The Chupacabra does. She's like, please. And it's like, all right, he had to be the one to get the keys. But once again, she got resurrected. But now it's like, okay. Because the thing that never made sense to Abby before, she was trying to explain it before, but Tilda was just very dismissive of it. It's like, but why all this security? Why would a pacifist like her even have guns? And why would those guns not activate until after the fact, the moment you got closer to the nanites? Why not have it outside to attack any strangers that might break in? So why all that whole setup? Because it wasn't about keeping necessarily anyone out. Well, it was, but the whole purpose was to make sure that the nanites never left, because that's why she had the whole setup. Because it's like, right, that wouldn't stop any robber, it just destroyed her life's work, because she recognized the dangers of the nanites if they ever got out, that she created artificial life, and they were, making choices of their own. The one inside of her now ended up releasing the nanites into Juan, and they released the nanites into, luckily, they were able to activate the EMP beforehand. So Dr. Monday goes back to being dead, which, like I said, is like, still, once again, it's not like she was in the, Candace McClure was in the episode a lot, but it's more than like that scene we got before she ended up initially dying, so. But that's what this is all about. And even Juan saying, like, well, why didn't she destroy them? It's like, because she had created life. And, even if it was artificial life, she, it's also her life's work, but it's also, right, she had created life, and you don't just kind of just snuff that out. Like, no matter kind of, it's like, do you have the right to kind of destroy something that's kind of sentient now? That's it, where you kind of get in that complicated territory, so. On the other side of the episode, we have everything with Sydney and Isabel. It's so interesting when Dr. Crane comes in knowing, it's like, oh, I know that you guys are scheming, you're stalling, she's destroying them. Like, how do you know that? I mean, I guess it's just they're looking at the state of the work where it's like, all right, you're doing your thing, but they probably start realizing, like, there's a pattern there. Like, okay, you're taking your sweet time, and she just happens to, it's just like, it's too much. Of a coincidence. And now it's a situation of, like, don't worry, we're not going to kill you. We're kind of almost like, we're explorers, not murderers. It's like, so you're not going to kill me, but you're going to experiment on me. Exactly. Because it's like, right, they already had their cure. Obviously, it's like, right, a sample kind of got brought to us inadvertently, and seeing a body bag, she was scared thinking it was one of the kids, but it ended up being Nate, so. And it's like, yeah, Nate kind of inadvertently, it's not a thing of like, oh, they didn't like have no connection to Nate. They probably, well, Nate was kind of acting on their behalf. He probably did reach out to them first, and then that's what created it. But it's like, right, he was still acting on your commands, doing all the terrible stuff. So it still kind of comes back to you. But what was also interesting too is Sydney kind of found out, like, wait, how do you know about Alex's, like, at one point, I guess she kind of found out about what Alex was going to do or something. It's like, wait, how do you know that? It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, I forgot the exact wording she said. There was something that she shouldn't know. Because Sydney's like, I didn't tell you that. It's like, oh, well, well, she's a sadomasochist. Well, saying Isabel told me, her being like the sadomasochist that she is. She's like, that's not. She's lying. Well, about the first part, I'm like, Jesus, Isabel. But I love like the whole body transformation working to their favor, because it's like, yeah, it's like, okay, you take over from here, Isabel. It's like, yeah, because you didn't realize or pay attention to the fact is Isabel's wrists are thicker than mine, so she slips out the restraint, switch over to Isabel, and knocks Dr. Crane out. Probably would have been better just to kill her then and there, but that wouldn't have resolved anything. You'd still be in the same boat you were at the beginning, I guess. Like, that's why you didn't kill her back in episode 6, so. Not only did they find out that they're on a kind of a rig in the middle of the ocean, so escape's not going to be that easy, but they still aren't in. Well, she ended up figuring out what it was that Alex is trying to actually do, but she wasn't able to warn Juan and Abby fully. They kind of pieced something together, but I don't think it's the exact thing that she was warning about. It's still unclear what because the thought, I forgot who had that thought. It was probably, I don't remember if this was Isabel thinking, if it was Sydney thinking this, or was it Juan and them thinking this, but the conversation of monsters being under, I think it might have been Abby and them thinking this, because with the nanites, he'd be able to get he'd be able to distribute the stem cells and make more monsters, but he'd have a single-minded monster. It'd be like a hive mind type of thing. So it's like, but is that really what he's aiming for? Once again, he always talks about world domination, world rule. He's like, that's a subsection of scientists I don't mess with, which obviously for Abby, it's like, it's depressing knowing that there's so many scientists trying to rule the world that it's become its own subculture. So there's that. But also he has no need for immortality, but then once again he's made it clear, like, oh, I just want to save humanity from its extinction, but there's got to be something. He's also narcissistic enough to be wanting to be worshipped regardless. It's like, you don't need immortality to rule the world, so I would assume that has nothing to do with wanting to be treated like a god either, because I feel like that would kind of fall into the category of ruling the world. But I'm like, what are you aiming for? Like, he must have like some sentimental reason why he's doing what he's doing, because he is the most non-sentimental person. It feels like that's by design, to cover up, like, right, I have to dull my heart, dull my emotions, and be more practical to make whatever it is I'm trying to achieve happen. So sadly, Dr. Crane did inject Sydney with something, and it's messing with their transformation, because it's like, right, Sydney kind of felt like, right, I can't transform, I can't take over. But it's like, oh, maybe she cured us. It's like, no, if she cured us, we wouldn't be in a state we're in right now. We wouldn't be able to talk to each other. But later on, Sydney's like, can't control the transformations, and now Isabel kind of ended up inadvertently taking over. So it might be a thing of, because of the design of their circumstances, like maybe it's a situation with Isabel and Sydney, maybe you'd have to like cure both of them simultaneously, because or maybe it had to be mid-transformation while you're swapping between the two, or give one a cure and then give the other. Maybe that's the only complete way to cure them, because of it's still one body, technically speaking, but stuff does rearrange, so I don't know if that affects anything that Crane was. Maybe it wasn't a foolproof cure, because they were saying, like, right, they were going to test stuff. If it didn't work, if it killed Sydney, they examined her body and tried again with a new subject, so. Then you have Abby declaring, like, right, we're not going to wait around for Sarkov to cure us. She's like, I'm going to be the one to do it. It's like, well, she's kind of been watching them both from afar, both Sydney and Sarkov. She knows the science to some extent. Whether she'll be able to make something happen, we'll have to wait and see. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.